Today we're going to be talking about some creative ways that you can add texture to your projects. That's coming up. Hello everyone, my name is Daniel Reese. This is Weaver Leather Supply. As leather craftsmen, toolers, artists, makers, we're often faced with a situation where we have to get creative to get the result that we're looking for. And texture is one of the biggest areas where we have to do that. So today we're going to be talking about 3 creative ways that you can add texture to your projects. And first up is something that we've touched on before, and that's going to be burlap. So we've talked about this one before, but we've never really gone into any detail on how to set it up and how to use it. We've just kind of touched on it, kind of skimmed the surface. Adding texture, unique texture to fabric in your pictorial carvings can be a challenge. Now, I say fabric, it really can be used for any texture in any part of your carving, but I found it to be very useful for fabric. So let's talk about how we're going to set that up. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a large matting tool. This one here is a M884. It doesn't have to be perfectly flat. This one's got a little bit of a dome to it on the end here. And we're going to secure our fabric to the matting tool. Now we can use a zip tie, we can use thread. There's all kinds of different ways you can do it. Just make sure that you secure your fabric to the matting tool so that you can move it around together. So how do we use it if we've got the fabric secured to the end of the matting tool? Well, in one of our recent videos, we tooled the robe of a gnome, and we wanted to create some heavy cloth texture in there, and we used burlap to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our matting tool, as I said, secure the fabric to the end of it. It doesn't have to be burlap, but it's got a great texture for this, and then work it over the areas where you want to create the texture. Here's a bonus tip for you. Changing the angle of the tool and of the fabric can suggest movement in the fabric, like rolls and folds. The other option is where we lay the fabric on the project and then we move our tool around the project instead of moving the fabric with us. This is a little easier in that you don't have to secure it to the tool, but the downside is you can't really see where you're putting the texture, so you're flying blind a little bit. So be careful if you use that version of the technique. I find it's a lot more precise and a lot easier to accomplish the look you're wanting if you secure the fabric to the end of the matting tool. Before we jump to the next technique, you know I gotta ask, if you're finding these videos helpful, if you're enjoying them, do me a favor and click the like button. It tells me, tells YouTube, tells Weaver that we're on the right track. So now let's jump back in and let's talk about a stylus and how we can use it to create organic textures. The patterns and textures in fabric tend to be very geometric. There are a lot of right angles and a lot of straight lines. What if we want something that's more organic? Let's say that we're working on some floral tooling. Let's take this leaf for example. If you look at any leaf, whether it's an oak leaf or a maple leaf, there's veins that run through the structure of the leaf in between the stems. Well, one way that we can replicate that is by taking a stylus and creating random jagged lines that overlap. The trick to it is just make sure you don't work them too tightly. We want to have space in there so that our eye can understand what we're looking at. This technique is going to add a lot of texture and depth to your projects. Now, it's not just for floral carving. I've used this exact technique to add the small scales on the face of a dragon. You're going to be amazed at how many different opportunities pop up to use these techniques when they're part of your skill set. The last technique is one of my favorites. You can actually create a pitted look in leather, like pitted metal, with rock. You can use concrete, really rough rocks like lava rock, or you can even use a garden border stone. This, I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's got a really rough texture right here. So let me show you how we do that. We're just going to put the leather on whatever surface it is that we're using to create the texture. You want the flesh side up. Then we're going to start strategically working the texture in by hitting the back of the leather, the flesh side, with a maul or a mallet. This is going to work that texture into the leather. The rougher the surface, the better texture that you're going to get out of it. And that grit is everywhere from that pavestone. So you heard me say strategically working the texture into the leather. So here's what I mean by that. What we don't want to do is just take the leather, lay it down on the surface that we're using and start smacking it with a maul or a mallet. That's not going to work. What we want to do is we want to move the leather around as we work the texture into the leather, and we want to continue to check it for bare spots and spots that might be getting too much texture. Just keep doing that until you get the look that you're going for. That's going to do it for this video. I will see you in the next one. In the meantime, go make something amazing. I am still gritty.